Hey, thanks for having me. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. My name's Ethan. I'm the founder CEO of Aaptiv. I hope everyone is okay and safe and adapting well to this new reality that we're all in. I put together some thoughts on what we have tried to instill in terms of best practices for keeping remote employees happy, both in terms of sort of what does working from home look like, and also what are the tools that employers can provide. So I'll walk through the deck. As we said, feel free to ask questions in the channel, and I'll do my best to address them at the end. So I think the first most important point here is that working from home is not a new or small factor. It doesn't really matter how long you think coronavirus is going to last, whether it's 2 months or 3 months or 6 months. The point is, working from home is a new reality, and it's something that we all have to embrace. I admittedly was quite reluctant when I started the company early on to allow work from home, but as I see the productivity that comes from being flexible about this, I personally have opened up quite significantly about it, and I think it behooves all employers to be more understanding that this is a new reality. So, there's a couple stats here saying that over 2/3 of folks are now working from home once a week. 8 million Americans, which I think represents something like 5.5 or 6% of the working population, is now working from home permanently, and that's up from, it was about 1% in 2005. So, 1 to 5% in 15 years is not an insignificant shift when we're talking about such a large user base. The other thing is, we as employers always have to be responsive to employee demands, right? We're all competing for the same really high quality talent, and arguably the war for talent's only getting worse, or better if you're an employee. And so I think, regardless of sort of recruiting, it's our job to build a happy and productive work culture. And it's evident, even just looking at my own team, but looking at some of the research that's out there, that employees are asking to be able to work from home. It facilitates, I think, in their mind, it facilitates freedom, trust, more productive working, and depending on the type of work you do, sometimes being outside of an office environment can actually be more productive. So let me talk about that in a little bit of detail. So previously, I think, and maybe some folks still have these concerns around what happens if I let people work from home for a certain amount of the week. The number one concern that we hear, or even frankly that I had, was a lack of productivity. And, as I said, I think depending on the type of work that you do, so certainly engineers or anyone that has to do designers often who have to do very dedicated, very focused work, really prefer the work from home environment. Less meetings, less distractions around the office, etc. So those people, I think, with a pretty high degree of certainty, will actually be more productive working from home than not. Anyone who has to do generally more strategic thinking, I think will also have moments where they can be better, more productive at home. So just like everyone else, I've been working from home for the past month or so, and my job is obviously a lot of strategic thinking. And so having blocks of time, like several hours in a day where I don't have a meeting, where I'm able to just sit down and focus, is a luxury that I didn't have before. And so I do feel more productive working from home. The second thing is a question of trust or accountability. How do I know they're not watching TV or screwing around or whatever? How do I know that they're actually working? And so, first of all, there's no real rational way to measure this, right? People use things like, are you active on Slack, or any tool that basically shows that you're active online. But if an employee wants to get around that, they're going to get around that. So instead, I think it's on the employer to establish clear processes, clear deadlines, and expectations of this needs to be delivered by this time. And if it's not, that's a problem whether you're in the office or not. I would argue that employees that you have concerns about regarding the trust factor with them or the accountability factor with them will likely be present even when they're in the office. There's enough going on in our offices these days and on the computer that if they want to screw around, they're going to screw around. So it's more a question of, are the processes in place when they're in the office or not? And for the ones that sort of are in the middle of the road or who are excellent performers, I think being facilitating independence can really help breed trust. And so if you proactively say, look, whether you work from home or from the office, I don't really care as long as the work gets done, that strengthens the relationship that a manager can have with their employees. And then another significant concern that I think people have had is, how do I bring my team together? How do I establish a strong culture, especially now when culture is critical, especially when it comes to the talent war that I was referring to. And I'll get to that. I actually think there's certain ways where the work from home culture can drive incremental cultural benefits that you can't get just from an office. So what I just talked about, I think, were some of the historic traditional concerns of what working from home looks like. What I put together here are some of the things that I and some of the other folks on my team have realized, and I've heard from friends of mine at other companies, has emerged in the last month or so. Because, arguably, I think it's true, at no point in the history of any of us being alive has the country or the world worked from home for this long of a period of time. So we've never really had this much of a sample set until now. So this notion of, I've found myself working even harder and actually being even more tired at the end of the day than going into the office, which I did not expect. And I realized it's because there is really no end to the day, and it's an ongoing mental, it consumes you mentally basically 24/7. Even the break of like commuting back and forth, or you went home and relaxed for a couple hours before starting work back up again, that's gone. So it's our job as employers to sort of force people to take a break away at a certain time. Another tool that we've seen work pretty well is to say, dedicate like a very specific area of your house or your apartment to work, and then when you're done, and go away from that area, just to create a mental separation in your mind of, this is the work area and this is the family area. I have an 8-month-old at home, and I've had a number of calls or video conferences where he's screaming or doing whatever, and I always get really embarrassed, and then when I'm on a call with someone else and their kid is making noise and they start apologizing, my reaction is, why are you apologizing? It makes no sense. I realize everyone is sort of in this like cycle of embarrassment when everyone on the other side completely understands what you're going through. And so I actually think this is an opportunity where you can use this to enhance your culture and to strengthen the relationships you have. I always think it's super interesting to understand more about my team members. Like, I love to learn about their families, or if they have kids, or if they have pets or whatever. And so this is an opportunity to really bring people together and welcome the fact that everyone has kids. A lot of people have babies. A lot of people have two parents working from home, so it's a little bit more chaotic. I think embracing that as opposed to expecting a level of, I think the assumption is that it's professionalism versus unprofessionalism, but that's not really true. It's a question of, are you acknowledging the way that people really are and really live? And if you can abide by that, I think your employees will be much happier. And then the last thing that I think is really important is in an environment, the office serves as an egalitarian sort of equalizer of working capabilities, right? Everyone generally has the same chair and desk and screen and electricity and space and Wi-Fi and everything. And that's not true when there's, dozens or hundreds of people of all different incomes and ages and titles, all on the same call, all working from where they live. And so to help mitigate some of that, we have not done this yet, but we're thinking about it. Is providing basically like a work from home starter pack kind of thing with just some basics of what everyone will need to help them work from home. And then even if certain senior folks have, I don't know, nicer houses or whatever, the point is everyone has like the bare minimum capabilities that they all also have at the office to do work productively from home. Okay. And then just to cut, so those are some thoughts on concerns that have arisen and how to mitigate those concerns. There's a couple of other best practices that I wanted to share. One is don't use video conferencing and Zoom, etc., just for work. Try to do like fun related things too. The same way you would run into someone in the hallway and grab coffee with them. Use video conferencing tools for that as well. There's Airbnb has launched this thing called Airbnb experiences, like online experiences that I think is interesting. You can, do a drawing class or like a craft cocktail class or something like that. But the point is, you don't want to just associate every time I'm talking with someone at work, it has to be about work. Use this as an opportunity to do other things as well. Midday breaks, I think, are really helpful. Try not to schedule a meeting maybe at 12 or 1 or whatever. Let people have lunch with their family the way they would have lunch with employees, just to give that break in the day that they used to have. And then I also think using the phone is helpful like if the conversation, obviously reading body language is a critical component and we often lose that with the at-home concern. But if the conversation is not sensitive to body language concerns or you're not sharing anything, try to use the phone just to provide more flexibility. We do like a weekly success at the company, and we realize that the energy is harder to capture when it's remote, right? And even people's accomplishments, if something great happens, sometimes like we'll stand up and announce it and everyone claps, and the person feels good, and that kind of stuff is really important to maintain even when you're remote. So you basically just have to be louder about it. You have to be more extroverted, more excited, more proud about it, so that that same level of energy is shared. Sick PTO days are hard to measure and hard to draw a distinction sometimes, especially in a situation like this when everyone is forced to work from home. If you're sick, like you can also do work, but you shouldn't actually. I think it's unreasonable for us to expect employees to do that, and it's also just a question of respect and trust. And so it's hard sometimes, but I think it's important for employers to really respect the sick and PTO days that employees need. I know that Jeffries maybe 2 weeks ago told all their employees to take Friday off just because they had all been working so hard, and it wasn't a big move or anything, but just the gesture was very much appreciated. So I think respecting that for the employees can be really helpful. And then I mentioned this before, but all of these, what I'm talking about is ways for employers to help employees be productive and feel appreciated. At the same time, we have to make sure, employers have to make sure that there's discipline around accountability, around ensuring that deadlines are met. And part of that is implementing the right tools and the right project management capability to make sure that no matter where the employee is working from, that they are held accountable to the same deadlines. And if they're not, then that's where some of these things I'm talking about have to be discussed, right? If someone is not capable of working remotely, if they're less productive, then that's a conversation to be had. If someone is not capable to have chunks of time where they have no meetings, that's a conversation to be had. So we still have the responsibility of ensuring that the productivity levels are just as high as they were when someone was working in the office. Okay, the other big part of this is true for both working from home and working from the office, which is mental and physical well-being. I'm sure everyone on this call has seen all the same research or heard all the same things I have, but more happier employees who are healthier, both mentally and physically, are more productive. And so there's any number of stats about the loss of economic impact because people are have depression, or how there's a lack of investment required, lack of acknowledgement. There's embarrassment associated with mental health issues. It's actually equally impactful on the physical health side, right? So physically fit employees are sick less. They cost less from an insurance perspective, and they're happier. And so anything that when you think about all the things that we do as employers for our employees, when it comes to retirement benefits, or it comes to bonuses or options or food or snacks or drinks, or all the different things that we do for the employees on top of just like core salary, mental and physical well-being, from if you look at it strictly from an ROI perspective, I think is probably the best ROI dollar we can invest, and also the least likely ROI dollar that a lot of companies are investing. And so this paired with the work from home best practices is, I think, a really key way to drive happy, loyal, and productive employees. One of the things that I want to say is when you think about the physical inactivity, or when you think about working from home and the benefits that you can provide, one of the things that we instilled at Aaptiv is a $500 education credit for anything that's actually not related to your job. So if a designer wants to learn, I don't know, about African art or something, and there's well, actually those are maybe tangential, but like if someone wants to learn something that is completely out of their realm of expertise, and just to stimulate their mind, they can sign up for any class, any online thing, any in-person thing that's up to $500, and Aaptiv will reimburse you for it. That's something that we've seen at other companies perform really well, and something that you could consider doing with your employees, especially during the work from home period. It gives them a break from just having to work all the time. And again, it reinforces that sort of trust mechanism and that willingness to invest in something in them beyond just what they do for the company. You're investing in them as a person, which ultimately will drive that sense of loyalty. Okay, before I get to questions, I just so I don't know how many of you know Aaptiv. Aaptiv we're a digital subscription. We focus on creating health products and content for our members. So we have a couple of thousand audio-based classes that focus on things like sleep, meditation, cardio, running, strength training, et cetera, et cetera. And we have probably about half the catalog can be used at home, and half the catalog is at the gym. And then we have another series of products like communities and team challenges and things like that. And so we usually charge $15 a month or $100 a year. Just for the sake of this conversation, we put together this little package of 3 months for $20. We don't make a ton of money off of this, but we just thought, we should live what we're advocating, which is taking care of employees and trying to keep them physically and mentally strong. And I can tell you that our engagement with some of our recovery stuff, specifically around meditation, sleep, stretching, and yoga, is like 3x what it usually is. So our current members are finding this super valuable. So I would like to think that any employer or any employee will find this valuable to the extent that this is something that's interesting. That's all I have. I'm open for questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ethan. I know I personally have been doing a lot of Aaptiv classes, and I've been working up a sweat, so thank you for
Good. I'm glad to hear.
that. On that, we did have a question come in. Would love to hear a little bit more on the benefits of working out from home. How does it help relieve stress?
Well, so there's a couple of things. So there's, first of all, when you are working out in general, you're obviously releasing, your body's releasing endorphins that will certainly calm you down, make you feel better, and reduce stress. That's a guaranteed result of any kind of elevated heart rate workout. I think the second thing is physically, the more that you move, the better your body feels. Forget about weight loss, just from like a flexibility and strength perspective, the better you sleep, the better you like just feel walking around. If you're going to be sitting in a chair for whatever 6 or 8 hours a day or longer than that, it's better if you've had 20 minutes of activity. And then I think the last thing is there's a sense of freedom associated with working out. You know, right now, working from home is a bit overwhelming in the sense that you're either with your family or you're with work, and that's basically it. And maybe you like watch some Netflix late at night. But if you can carve out even like 10 or 15 minutes a day at home, and just focus on yourself for that time, it's a sense of freedom that really makes you feel better, just because you did something just for yourself. And so, yeah, there's any number of benefits associated to working out at home, and I think particularly at this time when we all have to be at home, it can be really powerful.
That's great. We had another question. What are your thoughts on working from home versus working remotely in another place? For example, a coffee shop or another destination?
Well, so working from home, I think, is definitely more productive than working remotely at a public location. Simple logistical things like the sound around you, access to power outlets, you know, good Wi-Fi, a table to sit down. Like there's just a bunch of little things that end up being more productive working from home. What I will say though is the point about accountability and clear deadlines, and making sure that you're reaching those deadlines, that should be enforced regardless of where you are, right? So in theory, if an employee is hitting what they are supposed to hit from a deadline perspective, where they are working is irrelevant, largely irrelevant. But I could understand that a manager or a colleague who is doing video calls or phone calls with someone, and that person's in a loud public place and you're at home in a quiet place, you know, you could understand that getting frustrating for the other party. So I think from a work environment perspective, it's probably not ideal, but from a productivity perspective, it might be fine for depending on the environment and depending on how well that employee adapts to those things.
Really helpful. Another question. I know that a lot of companies, maybe some on the line, aren't in a very great financial place right now. Do you have any suggestions for some free benefits that you can offer your employees?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of stuff. So, well, I'll start with us. We've created a bunch of free stuff that we've put out. So, we've put out free, like we've been doing, I mean, you know, Instagram live workouts for free. We've been doing free workouts on YouTube that we've never done before. I think I can probably, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can probably find a list that's been shared with me of all the different free resources that companies can offer their employees right now. I do think that, you know, so there's two parts to it. One is uh, providing employees with the tools that they need, and you can use anything that's free to provide that to the employee. I think there's a second part of it though, which is the employee feeling that the employer is doing something for them. And if the thing is free from another party, like if the employee had access to it anyway, then uh, you know, it shouldn't necessarily be like this, but I think the employee may want something specific or expect something that the employer is providing them as like a tool. And so there's in that world, there's a lot of reduced price tools or things on sale or whatever that employers can also provide to employees. And what I'm thinking is, for example, like I think Microsoft might be offering some discounts on their Office package. I think Apple is offering some discounts on some of their software subscriptions. So some of these larger companies with large enterprise tools would be offering discounts that you could then pass on to your or that you swallow basically and then pass on, give it to the employee.
That's great. And just a reminder for those on the line, we will be sharing the kind offer that Ethan has made available via email. So just keep a lookout and we'll include that in the email later today. I'll also send over, Insight has built a list of resources that are free. And then we also, as some of you may know, have a partner directory on our portfolio company community platform with tons of different offers and discounts from the portfolio and other vendors. So I'll make sure to highlight that as well. Another question, do you have any strategies that you can share about how you personally don't lose productivity and also help your employees not lose productivity while working from home?
Yeah, I mean, for me, uh, I do most of what I said above in the sense that I have this dedicated area in my house where I spend whatever a big chunk of my day, and then I don't come back here when I'm done, basically, until I need to start working again. And that's I don't have a big place, but that's critical for me to keep that separation in mind. The other thing is I actually use the phone a lot more than I use Zoom because I'm, you know, in my role, most of the time I'm just talking strategy and stuff with other people or looking at presentations. And so I use the phone a lot, which allows me to walk around a little bit and just get that blood flowing, which is really nice. The other thing that I do that I think is really helpful is between calls, if a call ends early, I'll do like, 10 push-ups, 10 sit-ups, 10 squats, 10 pull-ups kind of thing, just to keep myself awake between calls. And that whole thing will take, 2 minutes or 3 minutes. So if you have a call that ends early, just having that break, I think is really nice. And then the last thing that I do is usually if I have like a couple back-to-backs and then I have a little bit of a break, I'll go play with my son for like 5 or 10 minutes. And even those 5 or 10 minutes, if I get to do it 2 or 3 times, it gives me a ton of energy for the next couple of hours. So, for those of you who have family around or whatever, taking I don't think you have to like be at work the whole time and not see your family the whole time. I think blending those two can be helpful. At least it is for me. And for employees, I mean, honestly, all this stuff I just went through is exactly what we are offering, um, exactly what we're telling our employees to do, which is, the dedicated space, take the breaks during the middle of the day, make sure, like, when we have conference calls with like 10 people on them, there will be like 6 babies on those calls because we tell people it's totally fine to bring your kid to the call if you have to. It's no problem. So by instilling some of that culture, I think we're seeing really good productivity. Honestly, it took us maybe 4 or 5. Like I think we all started working from home March 12th or something, and then by that, which was a Thursday or something, I think, and then by that Monday or Tuesday, we were like rolling. It was really, I was really impressed at how quickly our team adapted to that. So
Wonderful. I know we're up on time, so thank you so much, Ethan, and thank you for everyone who joining. We will be sending out that email later today, so keep a lookout for that. Thank you, everyone.
thank you, everyone. I hope this was helpful. Stay safe.